One of the things that often stops me from painting is not knowing what to actually paint. Even though we know that watercolor is going to be fun and relaxing, it's really easy to get stuck at that very first hurdle. So over the years, I've come up with a sort of a collection of a list of things that are ideal subjects for watercolor painters, especially beginners. And in this video, I want to share my top 3 with you. These are my favorite tried and tested subjects that are perfect for beginners or anyone who needs a little bit of help getting started. If you are an absolute beginner, you might find my free supplies class for watercolor painters useful. Check the description for the links. Now let's talk about some ideal subjects for watercolor painters. When you're a beginner, you want to pick something that is nice and simple, but bright and colorful, because often it's the color that's attracted us to the idea of painting in the first place. And I'm not sure if you've noticed, but there's pretty much every art book that you can find, and most of the traditional sort of art classes have that ubiquitous apple in it. And there's a very good reason for that. Things like fruit and vegetables are great subjects because they are made up of very simple shapes and they're very, very familiar to us. It's much easier to paint a subject that is very well known to you. Now, I must say, even though I'm saying an apple is a great painting subject, I don't think I personally ever painted one, probably because it is so ubiquitous, but there is so much for us to choose from. You can go and raid your fridge vegetable drawer and dig something out and paint that. And of course, find one of the many wonderful royalty-free images that are available to us online these days. Now, I might not have painted an apple, but I've certainly painted all sorts of other things. Some of my favorites are pineapples, cherries, pears, and a lovely bunch of grapes. Now, apart from being simple shapes and very familiar to us, there's another reason that fruit and vegetables are a great painting subject, and that's that they are an organic form as opposed to a man-made one, which means you don't have to worry too much about perfect symmetry, and there aren't specific angles and things like that that you need to get 100% correct. So if you're somebody who's a little bit worried about the drawing aspect, choosing something like this is ideal. My second suggestion for an ideal subject for a watercolor beginner is flowers. Now, flowers obviously share a lot with the fruit and vegetables that we were talking about in terms of being organic forms and bright and colorful and very familiar to us. So for all the same reasons, they're going to be marvelous things for us to choose as a painting subject. And who doesn't love flowers? I'm sure when you think of painting, it's probably one of the first things that pops into your head. Don't forget, there are so many different ways that you can go about capturing them. I'm talking here a little bit about style. And I think that's also something that can stop us from choosing a painting subject, is that we worry that we're not good enough at drawing it, that we won't get all the details in. But please bear in mind that when you are trying to draw or paint something like a flower, you can choose to do a perfect illustrative rendition of it, which will require very exacting draftsman skills. But you can also choose to adopt a loose and painterly approach. That's my personal absolute favorite. And it's something I would definitely recommend if you're a beginner or if you're someone who wants to really just loosen up and enjoy splashing paint about. The sort of loose painterly style is very forgiving and such a relaxing way to spend an afternoon. And I think a subject like flowers is ideal for that particular style. Just as we said with the fruit and vegetables, we're not looking for perfection. There's not too much symmetry that has to be there for the subject to be recognizable. And don't forget, we are painting the charm and the idea of the flowers. And very often we could have petals that are wilted or being chomped by a bug or something like that. So it's very forgiving in terms of what you need to capture drawing-wise. And it's a rather marvelous exercise to see how much of a petal you can capture in a single brush stroke. Those soft, floppy brushes that we use for watercolor are marvelous for this sort of thing. You can stop worrying too much about the details and let your big, soft, fluffy brush capture the loose, expressive spirit of these beautiful flowers. Now, if the idea of painting flowers is one that occurs to someone who's thinking of taking up painting, another very popular subject is animals. So many of us love the idea of capturing our furry friends in paint, but my recommendation here is to start with our feathered friends instead. I think painting a bird is a much more approachable prospect There are lots of birds that have a lovely simple shape. And in fact, if you want a fun little doodly exercise, you can create a whole lot of blob shapes on a page, add a little beak and two little feet, and hey presto, they're all instantly recognizable as doodly little birds. It's a lot of fun to do, and something you might want to give a go when you've got a spare afternoon. And I'm not suggesting that we need to be quite that whimsical when we're painting in watercolor, but it does make the point that the birds are so nice and simple, and a shape that we can make quite recognizable quite easily. Now, don't forget, you're never limited to reality. With any of these things that we're choosing to paint, you can always go to town and choose any color that your heart desires. There's no need for you to stick to whatever color your reference is, or the real fruit or flower that you have chosen that happens to be in front of you. Often what attracts us to painting something is a cute little pose. I know that was certainly the case for me when I was painting birds. I found a charming photo of these cute little birds. I think they were those little chickadees, the really tiny little brown ones. And I love their little energy, their sort of quirky little body poses. And that's kind of what made me want to paint them. But I didn't feel that their boring brown coats actually suited them. So I really went to town with this idea of painting them in a different color. And I'll link that video up in the cards if you want to have a look at that and see what I mean about choosing different colors to paint whatever subject happens to be in front of you. In that video, I was also talking a little bit about our mood when we're painting. And I have to say, if you need a pick-me-up, there is one bird that is unbeatable. If you are feeling in need of a pick-me-up, there is one bird that I don't think we can go past, and that's the rooster. They are the happiest little birds that I have ever painted. Not so little. I don't know why, and maybe it's just me, but chickens and roosters just make me smile. And I don't think it's actually possible to paint a rooster without smiling. If you want to see what I mean, I've got another video all about that where you can watch me paint one of these roosters from start to finish. I'll pop that video up on the screen and you can watch it next.